When did you first come in contact with the concept of the IEN?
Representative Bell and I were invited, together with Superintendent Tom Luna, to go down and see Utah's version of the IEN. That's when we first started hearing sort of conceptually of the idea.
And what were your first thoughts? What did you think this could become?
I think we're infatuated with it. We thought it was just this great opportunity that would assist kids and assist schools in rural communities to be able to provide courses that they could only dream of offering. And so we honestly felt like there was a tremendous opportunity to address the thoroughness issue that holds over our head, and so we saw nothing but great opportunities for kids.
And walk me through your involvement with the bill in 2008, because you were a co-sponsor.
I was a co-sponsor. We certainly endorsed it. We endorsed the concept of it. We had a vision of what the IEN would look like. Didn't turn out to be the vision that transpired, but we had a vision of it. I went and helped find the money for it. We went and felt that we were making great strides. This was something we all bragged about, and when we went home, as something that would really help our communities and help our kids.
And as you saw it starting to take shape, how did you feel about it?
Well, I guess there was a series of steps that were good news. I mean, I can remember I was sitting in JFAC the day that the announcement of the award came out, and that it was being awarded to Syringa and ENA. I was sitting there. I still have a copy, I'm certain, of the press release in one of my files in the office. I remember seeing it put together, and Syringa's from my home community, so we were excited. It was now it wasn't only helping kids, it was also going to help a community that doesn't get a lot of those kind of awards or announcements.
Did you have any questions at the time with the contracting process?
Not that initial year. It was shortly thereafter that the announcement came out saying that they were going to award a large chunk of the business to CenturyLink, and while that bothered some, we still thought, well, this is still workable. This is going to be huge. The opportunities are great. CenturyLink's a good company, but can't deliver services to all corners of the state, so they're going to have to use, and work with Syringa, and they're going to have to, they're going to have to address it in that way. We still thought Syringa and ENA had one contract, and they were providing some additional opportunities with CenturyLink. And the initial blueprint that showed how they would do it certainly showed that. And then that got pulled off, and it got changed again, and egos and other things got involved.
When, separate from that issue, when you saw everything being implemented in the classrooms, how did you feel? How did it affect the classrooms?
Well, sort of mixed, to be honest with you. We saw great benefit of what was happening in the classroom. We saw a few things that started to give us pause. Of course, we were watching and seeing this contracting issue devolve, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And of course, parties were warring over that, and it was turning into a legal issue. So we had concerns over that. We saw, and a lot of people will say, well, the problems with the IEN are only in the procurement process. That's not true. There are mistakes in the way the system is. I think we were too anxious to put this in place, that we didn't put enough barriers or enough protections for the state and the taxpayer. For example, the ENA gets to determine what services are delivered to the school, and then they get paid for those services. So in many cases, unbeknownst to us, the contract ended up being that the fox is guarding the hen house, and you know, we really felt like, and still feel like, that was inappropriate. We did see some areas where school districts weren't quite using it in the same manner and method that we thought it was going to be used. School districts who were purchasing internet services on their own before all of a sudden said, hey, we get this free deal by joining the IEN. And it didn't matter that it was more expensive. Now some would arguably say it's better connectivity, larger bandwidth. That's true in some cases and may not be true in every case. We saw a few schools where they used it to replace a teacher. You know, and so all of a sudden, instead of having a calculus teacher in 3 of your high schools, you've got one in one high school, and you're teaching via the internet, via teleconferencing to the other schools. I'm not sure that was sort of our vision that would take place. And so there were, you know, after that first honeymoon, there were certainly some issues that started to give some of us pause, but the contracting piece was by and far the largest concern.
Along those same lines, one of the things that we've been looking at is whether there are metrics on whether the students at Receive sites, the 2 kids in DECLO, for example, who are taking AP Calculus online, are receiving the same quality education as kids who are taking it in person, and whether they're retaining the information the same way. And we found that they're being assessed, but the information's not being collated.
Correct.
Did that conversation ever come up? And if not, why not? Should it have come up?
It absolutely should have come up. And it may have come up, but not in the circles that I was in. Not from a budgetary standpoint. It may have come up as a policy question. So I can't say definitively that it didn't. If it didn't come up, it should have come up. And I think by and large, at least from my perspective, we trusted and still do trust that our school districts are going to use quality professionals, and we believe they will, and that our kids are going to get a quality education. And even regardless of whether it's done through an IEN course, or whether it's an IDLA course, or whether it's a course sitting with the teacher in the classroom. We want there to be that same level of quality. Whether we set in place appropriate measurements to determine that, I'm sure we didn't.
Going back to when things started, once the honeymoon was over, when did you first realize the honeymoon was over?
Well, I think, you know, there's sort of a couple of stages. The honeymoon on the contracting we became aware of that right away. I mean, that certainly, as soon as you know, Syringa decided to file suit, and in my opinion, justifiably so. Others may disagree with me, but that's fine. When Syringa filed suit, and many of us were watching, because in many cases we felt like things hadn't transpired correctly there, and so we were concerned about that. I think we were still advocating for a solution. I mean, I think up until last year. Last year was really a telling time for us, as we had some in my committee who were ready to disband it last year, and legally we felt like we couldn't. We hadn't done our proper due diligence. We were advised by the Attorney General's office to do so. We instituted language that the Attorney General's office suggested. We certainly modified it and made suggestions back, and it took some time, but many of the actions that took place last year were because the honeymoon was gone, and we knew when we come to town and found out that we were no longer getting E-rate, and we hadn't for some time, and yet the Department of Administration had not shared that with us, that they hadn't been a true partner with us in this effort. Many felt like there needed to be some major changes, and that in many ways is still continued.
When you got that news last year, how did you feel?
Oh, I was angry. I was like the rest of my colleagues. We were angry. We were angry, and it was a double barrel. The Supreme Court had ruled that the contracts were invalid and that it should be remanded back to the lower court for further consideration. And at the same time, we found out now we've got this investigation going on, and we found out that now the USAC is withholding our payments, and we also found out that that Teresa Luna had extended the contract to the current providers without information. We had members of our committee who serve on the IPRAC committee who felt like the Department administration was hiding information or not being forthcoming to them. So a number of us were very frustrated. At the end of the day, however, we recognized that kids' lives were at stake then, as they are this year. We realized that school districts would be put in harm's way. And so we settled on some very strongly worded language. We settled on telling them that they had a month-to-month appropriation, that they could only pay to a valid contract, and that if they didn't use it, they had to revert the money. And now we've reverted it. We really had hoped. We gave them strong indications and language. We wanted them to work this out, to figure out a settlement. In hindsight, we were probably stepping over our authority by doing so. And in hindsight, for the overall viability of the IEN and the overall benefit of our kids, it's probably good that they didn't settle. And I know it's painful right now, but what's happening now is necessary in order to protect it in the long term.
Should this have ended up in court?
Absolutely. Absolutely should have ended up in court. And I think we'll be back in court. I do think we'll have other legal challenges and issues depending on the next few steps and how that takes place.
Do you feel like information was withheld?
We've certainly felt like they weren't forthcoming with all of the information at the same time that they were receiving it. They weren't treating us as an equal partner to help solve a solution. That we were being managed, if you will, and they would only share with us the information. We went through that whole episode where they said we can't even talk to E-rate or USAC. We can't even figure out why they're withholding it. Well, we now know that that's not true. It was a reporter who called and said, "Well, here's the issues," and we know that they knew what those issues were. And what those challenges were.
Do you think that they weren't forthcoming on purpose, or do you think that it was incompetence?
Hard to tell.
What do you think?
Probably both.
Looking back, is there anything you personally would have done differently?
Yeah, we all have the benefit of 20/20 vision. If we could redo it, I would have structured the way that bill was drafted differently. I would have structured or insisted on protections for the state and for the taxpayer being in there. We would have insisted on. We all envisioned that there would actually be multiple vendors that would participate in delivering this to all the corners of the state. And I think we would have made sure that that was the vision. We'd have made sure that it was absolutely E-rate compatible. And I think we know some of the reasons that we're not not getting the E-rate. I don't think we know all of them. At least when I talk to others who are experts in the field, they point out several areas where we're deficient. And I think we would have, in hindsight, I would have liked to make sure we protected the state better that way. I'd have liked to make sure that if we had a vendor who was a bad actor, we could remove that vendor and plug in a different vendor, like we did with the prison system, where we had a prison contractor who was not appropriate. We still own the facility. We still had the ability to take charge of our own destiny. I think legislators, superintendent, everybody involved got so caught up in the excitement and technology is such a foreign field to us. It's foreign still today, and we're a lot smarter about it than we were 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think we got so excited we did not put in place the appropriate precautions, and that we bear that burden.
What do you think the path forward should be?
Well, I think we're taking a step at a time. The initial step you saw this week, where the contract's void, we can't pay. I know there's still some who believe we could have done something other than what we did. I don't believe so. I think we spent every effort, hours and hours in meetings, exhausting every option, every idea. We didn't say no to the ideas right up front. We looked at the consequences, and we felt like for the short term, the best solution would be to work with the State Department of Education because they had the best connection. Connection's the wrong word. The best ability to help school districts. No other state agency, no other state entity has that same ability. And so that's the short term. The long term is it has to be a different entity, maybe a corporate body politic made up of several vested interests: Department of Commerce, State Controller's Office, Department of Education, all of those entities, plus some legislators. So I think you have to reform IPRAC, you have to reform what the IEN looks like. I think it has to change to a statewide broadband initiative where we're helping provide broadband in every community, not just to high schools, but to businesses. And that will cost us more money in the long run. And we have to do it right. We have to have an appropriate manager who is not vested in the outcome. That's not going to be paid based on additional lines or additional broadband being laid. He's going to get paid by delivering services and get paid by making it E-rate compatible and staying within the provisions of the law. We need to have that kind of management system with an oversight committee or body politic, maybe like the health exchange in some ways. You've got a board overseeing actions of another. You might house it in some place like the State Controller's Office, who has great technical expertise, but may not have the ability to understand the vision for schools. And so that's why you need that corporate body politic. That's probably the long term. Now there's an argument about when the short term ends and when the long term starts, and what we call the bridge in between, what that looks like. And that probably, I think the bridge looks much like what we did here. I think you'll see school districts for the next 3 to 4 months, many of them signing up with the same carriers because that's easiest. May not be most efficient, may not be most cost effective, but that will be easiest, and it's maybe the best way to avoid disruption of service for their kids. I mean, the ink wasn't even dry, our seats weren't even cool, and ENA had already sent out a letter to every school district telling them they want their business. And that's fine. That's how That's how it works. And school districts will have to make the effective choice. But then there's another question going forward. And they have a fiduciary responsibility. And we will put, I think, additional responsibility on them to make sure that they are not just taking advantage of the state's willingness to pay for those contracts, but we need to make sure that that money is being spent effectively. And so they may need to look at going out for an RFP and being E-rate compatible and obtaining E-rate dollars and for the 2016 year. And they can do that in the interim, and if they have to lay new fiber or have to have additional routers, they will be able to do that, and the state will help them. We're not going to walk away from them. Our top priority is taking care of those kids, but that doesn't mean we're going to waste money either. We're going to do it appropriately.
Is this week worst case scenario, or can it get worse from here?
Oh, it can get definitely worse, and probably will.
How?
I don't think we're through with the litigation and legal issues that face this. I don't think, and there's a myriads of options there. It'll be a sore disappointment if we have one kid who is harmed by this action. If we have one kid who is unable to complete a class because their school district couldn't or wouldn't do what's necessary to keep the courses up and running. That, in my opinion, would be worse.
One last question. How pissed off are you?
You know, I've been the gamut. I've been angry. I've been angry at the people involved. I've been angry at the hard-headedness of some people, probably including myself. I've been very angry. I'm comfortable that we made the right decision in the step we took earlier this week. It was a painful decision. It certainly is not without its detractors and not without those who would like to throw rocks at it. But it was the only decision we could do for the long-range viability and the only decision we could do to help protect kids, both this year and in the future. We believe in order for the IEN or some version of it to exist in the future, we have to do it with E-rate funds. It has to be E-rate compatible. It has to be with contracts that are beyond reproach. They're absolutely transparent in how the contracts are awarded and the appropriate protections to the state. And we believe there has to be a clean break between the tainted issues of today and those tainted contracts. Legal scholars can argue who's right or wrong on that. I don't care. We have to have a clean break between that perception of contracts being done inappropriately and what we want to do in the future. We have to be able to honestly look forward to our partners at USAC and the FCC and others, and to our schools, and say, this is all clean, we've done it all right, it is all good to go. And if we want that, we have to have that separation. We can't muddy the waters with emergency contracts and setting aside laws and trying to legally dance around and maintain the same contracts. That can't happen. It can't happen now. It can't happen next month. It can't happen in August when the invitation to bid is supposed to be announced. Those can't happen. That, in my opinion, that all has to be withdrawn, backed up, and you have to have this clean separation.
We're hearing a lot of anger in the legislature, but ultimately the kids are the ones who see the consequences of this, the kids and the teachers and the superintendents. what are the consequences for the people in charge? No one's been fired. No one's been let off in handcuffs. Should they be?
That's a tough question, but it's beyond my authority and my ability. We are doing everything we can to protect kids so that the mistakes of the adults don't hurt the kids. Will there be repercussions? Absolutely. Will they happen as fast as I and others might think they should? Probably not. But I believe that there will be some level of repercussions. I think the legislature, in many ways, will demand it. We haven't focused a lot, to be honest with you, or at least I haven't focused a lot on blaming persons. We've blamed systems and blamed sort of procedures. But I've tried to avoid blaming individuals, frankly, because I don't know who to blame completely. I have ideas, but and frankly, I didn't feel like I could be as effective as finding a solution if I focused on that. I needed to focus on, and I still need to focus on, how we help kids in schools, how we give the necessary resources so that schools can do everything they can to avoid some child not being able to finish their course, some child, some teenager, some kid that's trying to graduate and they need calculus to finish, and now the IN's not working. So I've purposely kept myself, while others in the building are ready, and have expressed, some louder than others, statements and concern. I haven't focused in that arena because my job was to help try and find a solution going forward.
All right, in good shape. Thank you.
Okay.